Welcome to Global One Media Stocks to Watch. I'm Michael Swido. I'm speaking today with Ernest Mast. He's the CEO and president of Doré Copper Mining. They're a Canadian company that aims to be Quebec's next copper producer. Ernest, welcome to Stocks to Watch.
Pleasure to be here, Michael.
I was looking at your latest investor presentation, and I was struck by the phrase, right commodities at the right time. I think that's really apropos because demand for copper is soaring. It's used in wind farms and solar panels, EVs, and electricity networks. And your company is focused on restarting operations at an old mining site in Quebec in a place called Chibougamau. It's relatively remote, about 7.5 hours north of Montreal, but it's in an area that's known for mining. Set the scene for us. How far advanced are your mining projects? What's there?
So this Chibougamau mining camp operated for 50 years, closing in 2008. We acquired the properties in 2017 and have been working on a restart scenario since then. We've had a lot of success with exploration. Our major deposit is called Corner Bay, and we've increased the size of that deposit from 1.5 to 8.6 million tons. And it's also one of the highest grade copper deposits in Canada and in the world. We have a lot of infrastructure which remains from the previous mining operation. We have road networks, we have power to the principal sites, and we have a concentrator at the Copper Rand site, which is called the Copper Rand Mill. So we're really well positioned to restart this Chibougamau mining camp, becoming a copper producer. When we talk about right commodities at the right time, we also have a gold byproduct. And as you know, gold prices are at record highs, so that will give us an additional economic bump.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that, to have an additional revenue stream and economic bump, as you said. As I understand your business strategy, it's based on something called a hub-and-spoke model. So your mining projects are all located around a central processing facility. You referred to it. That's the Copper Rand Mill. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but first tell us, why did you choose this model for your projects in Chibougamau?
So a hub and spoke model is typically used in the mining industry where you have clusters of deposits in an area, and none of the deposits by themselves are large enough or exceedingly large to have a dedicated mill to them. But you have a central processing facility that can treat these different deposits in the area. Now, the mineralogy of these deposits is very similar, so there's no issue with mixing the ores, and that really what works best. The best example of, say, a hub and spoke scenario in the world is what's going on in Sudbury for close to 100 years now. Inco, Falconbridge, now Vale, and Glencore have utilized the hub and spoke in that camp where a number of mines are feeding a centralized mill.
So in this case, the hub of your model, it's the Copper Rand Mill. It dates back to the 1960s, and I believe it shut down in 2008. What's the state of the mill now?
So the mill is, as you mentioned, it was built in the late 1950s, and then there were expansions in 1981, 1984, and 2001. The most recent expansions, those were steel structures. Those structures are in fine shape. The original construction required some repairs, which we did extensively during 2020, 2021, and 2022. So when you visit our mill, it actually looks like a new building. We've taken people into the mill who worked there previously, and after some of the refurbishment work that we did, their comment was, "We haven't seen this place look so good in our lifetimes." So we're very happy with the quality of the infrastructure that we have.
All right, well, that sounds like a great refurbishment. In addition to that, you conducted a preliminary economic assessment of your properties back in 2022. At that time, copper was trading around $4 20 cents a pound. Copper prices took a sharp dip, pretty much as I understand it, right after your economic assessment was published. But they've rallied again, and they're back up now, trading higher than they were 2 years ago. Currently, copper is around $4.35 a pound. So how does this affect your analysis? What's the economic potential look like today?
So during our preliminary economic assessment, we used a copper price of $3.75, which at the time was the 24-month lagging average. At that price, our pre-tax net present value of the project was $360 million. However, if we were to use, say, a price of $4.25 per pound of copper, which more or less is the price as we speak today, the net present value increases by approximately $200 million, showing that our project is very leveraged to the copper price. And in the current copper environment, we see our project being extremely robust. As you mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, copper is a critical metal for the energy transition and for the continued industrialization of certain areas of the world that are becoming more urbanized. And so the perspective for copper is very positive.
Yeah, it definitely is. If we take a closer look at your preliminary economic assessment, it indicates that you're among the lowest cost and possibly the most efficient copper exploration companies. Tell us what's behind this.
As you mentioned, our project is one of the most capital efficient copper projects in the industry. To produce 50 million pounds per year of copper equivalent over 10 years, we need an initial investment of $180 million, giving us one of the best capital investment ratios in the industry. And also, once we get into operations, our operating cost will be $1.35 per pound, and our all-in sustaining cost would be approximately $2.24 a pound, ranking us as a very efficient producer. And really what's behind that are two things. The first thing is the fact that we already have infrastructure. And although Chibougamau is, say, relatively far away from commercial centers, we're already connected to very good infrastructure in terms of road, water, power, and having a community close to the mine. That is going to decrease the initial capital cost that we have to spend to get the project into operation. And then once we're in operation, some of the factors that help us considerably are A, our projects tend to be the highest grade, and B, Quebec is a jurisdiction which is blessed with competitive electricity costs. And those two things together result in our project being very competitive from capital costs and operating costs.
So you have the infrastructure you need, the roads, the rail lines, electricity, that's all in place. You have high-grade copper assets and gold, as you mentioned as well. And at the top of the segment, I said, what is your all's motto, I think it's on your website, is that your company aims to be Quebec's next copper producer. How close are you to making this a reality?
Given where we are now is that we're in a feasibility study now. We're looking to complete infill drilling at the deposits that were part of the preliminary economic assessment. That would take approximately 6 to 8 months to complete. Upon finishing that, we would embark on completing the feasibility study, which would take another 6 months. And then while we're doing this concurrently, we are obtaining permits for the restart of the operation. And then we would enter a phase where we'd look to obtain the financing for the project, and then we could do the construction of the project. So it looks like in a best case scenario, we could be in production in approximately 2 to 3 years.
That's great. While Doré Copper's business is clearly advancing, it's been a rough ride for the company's share price for the past 3 years. So tell us, what's your investment thesis? Why should investors buy into Doré Copper now?
A couple of things are occurring in the market right now. We're beginning to see a resurgence in copper and gold prices. Major companies and operating companies have definitely seen that bump. It's just a matter of time before that starts trickling down to the explorers and developers. And I think as we advance our project in terms of the feasibility study, additional exploration, some permitting milestones, the market will begin to realize that our project is a real project and will start to be evaluated on a value basis, which currently is not occurring. Our current PNAV is extremely low, less than 0.1, and we should have a much higher valuation given the fundamentals and business case of the project. And so I do believe things will turn around and the market will begin to evaluate us on a value basis. And once that occurs, I think we become an incredible investment at the current time.
Ernest, I'm curious, what exploration opportunities do you have that are over and above the preliminary economic assessment?
The Chibougamau mining camp is a very prolific geological area, and we have a number of exploration opportunities over and above what's in the preliminary economic assessment. Foremost among them is a structure which we recently identified called Cedar Bay Southwest. It is southwest a few hundred meters of the past producing Cedar Bay mine. We do know that there is a mineral zone there that has never been drilled over its full extent. Some small area that had been drilled gave very promising results, but what would be normally the most productive area of that zone is not being drilled, and that would be an incredible addition to the company's mineral portfolios. If we were to have success and identify another vein there, it would be high-grade copper with a very decent gold byproduct. Another area is the Gwillim mine. It's a past-producing mine located north of the Copper Rand Mill, and it has had a number of drill holes in the property since the 1980s. We've done about 7 drill holes since 2018. Most of the drill holes hit high-grade gold, and we're currently in the process of compiling the results from Gwillim and looking to see if there is something more to do there. And that's just a couple of our opportunities.
It's definitely an exciting time for the copper industry. New supplies are needed to meet the demand in North America. So we definitely appreciate you walking us through the projects and wish you good luck with it.
Thank you very much, Michael, and wishing your viewers a good day as well.
We've been speaking with the CEO and president of Doré Copper Mining, Ernest Mast, and you've been watching Global One Media's Stocks to Watch. I'm Michael Suedo.